anti-nuclear protest, Swiss style. It's a protest to commemorate the Chernobyl disaster of 30 years ago. Thousands died, and the surrounding area was contaminated by radiation forever. And it's also to commemorate Fukushima, two nuclear disasters that strike fear into everyone.
The continued use of nuclear power anywhere in the world should be a constant worry.
We cannot control it. Nature's more powerful.
There are new risks all around Germany because many nuclear power stations in Europe are completely outdated. Are we sitting on a nuclear powder keg? The Betznau nuclear power station in Switzerland. It's been in operation for 47 years, the oldest nuclear power station in the world. Problems have become an everyday occurrence. Another nuclear power station known for unwelcome incidents is Tihange in Belgium. It's been connected to the grid for 39 years. Despite its major problems, this nuclear power station is still allowed to continue running. And then there's Europe's largest nuclear power station, Zaporozhye in Ukraine. There's fighting nearby with dangerous weapons. Germany is surrounded by radiation risks. 178 nuclear power stations are in operation in Europe that could pose a threat. Most of them are more than 30 years old. This increases the risk of a nuclear accident. The Bundestag in Berlin. Engineer Michael Seiler is on his way to a meeting in the German parliament. He's a member of the Reactor Safety Committee and is one of the most distinguished experts on nuclear power in Germany. A panel of experts is meeting today. Seiler has long worked towards getting foreign nuclear power stations switched off.
Getting out of nuclear power is a political decision in every country. The problem is that safety standards for the nuclear power stations were already lower in neighbouring countries. Switzerland, Belgium, France and the Czech Republic. These facilities would never be approved in this country.
The Swiss nuclear power station at Betznau is close to the German border. If there were an accident, a radioactive cloud could threaten the whole of southern Germany. This road through the woods leads to a very dangerous place, to a high-risk zone, Betznau nuclear power station. We're not allowed to continue. Axpo, the operator, doesn't permit filming on company property. It prefers to stay out of the public eye. An image film allows us to get an insight into the facility. It focuses on the intact world of the nuclear industry and the company's diligent engineers. Betznau dates back to the pioneering phase of nuclear technology. Many consider it particularly prone to problems. One section has once again been shut down. The operator talks about irregularities.
In recent years and decades, Axpo has invested a lot of money in the safety of the facility. We've got an emergency power supply, we've installed an emergency system, and we will not see the events of Fukushima taking place here in Betznau. But we have a problem. Last summer we found irregularities in the material of the pressure vessel. We're investigating these so we can once again prove we are safe enough to rejoin the grid.
A study by Michael Seiler from the German Institute for Applied Ecology, commissioned by the state government of Baden-Württemberg, reached the conclusion: switch it off immediately.
We compared the safety systems in Betznau to those in modern reactors, including some in Switzerland. And we found that Betznau has fewer safety systems with regard to emergency cooling and electrical supply.
The National Inspection Authority for Nuclear Power in Switzerland extended Betznau's operating period by another 10 years regardless.
When it comes to old nuclear power stations, and this happens in Switzerland too, they always apply double standards. Otherwise, you'd have to switch them off right away. Modern reactors have more safety systems. With the old ones, they only ask if there are so few safety systems that an imminent major accident is likely.
Heini Glauser is scared that there really could be a major accident one day. An architect and energy engineer, for 5 years he's held a vigil in front of the headquarters of the Swiss Federal Nuclear Safety Inspectorate in Brugg. Always at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, a silent protest against Betznau, every day.
The trigger was Fukushima. That was the second major shock after Chernobyl 25 years earlier. Japan is a high-tech nation that was always cited when people said accidents wouldn't happen here. I knew we had to do something.
His 1000th vigil was the occasion for a major demonstration by opponents to nuclear power. It also marked the 5th anniversary of Fukushima. Heini Glauser considers the protest a success. His voice is heard here, but he and his fellow comrades in arms are only a minority in Switzerland. The Japanese guests, individuals harmed by the radiation in Fukushima, can't understand that.
The disaster made me sick. I don't know what it will do to me in a few years' time. I'm scared of that. It's a big emotional burden. That's why I think nuclear power should be abolished around the world.
The Atomium in Brussels, a symbol of technological progress and the belief in the peaceful use of nuclear power. The optimistic vision of a modern, technological world. The reality in Belgium today, the Tihange nuclear power station. Disruptions are as much part of this power station as the steam from the cooling towers. This power station was close to nuclear meltdown once before, a gigantic disaster. It was meant to be closed down long ago, but the operators are allowed to continue. The exterior concrete shell needs constant patching up. But far more dangerous are the thousands of cracks on the inside on the reactor vessel.
The cracks are a big problem because they weren't noticed for 40 years. The question is, what could happen? They could lead to the pressure vessel tearing. That would make it unmanageable.
The Belgian authorities categorically refuse interviews with us, and the operator of the power station won't answer questions either. Leo Tubax doesn't live far from the Tihange reactor. In Belgium, he's a lone voice against nuclear power.
It's not just the situation in the nuclear power station itself. It's also about the surroundings. These nuclear power stations are in a very densely populated area. If there's a disaster, a region with 9 million people would have to be evacuated. We learned that from Fukushima and Chernobyl.
Tihange is just 60 kilometers from Aachen. In the event of an accident, 500,000 people in the Aachen area would be affected immediately, followed by millions of people in Germany's densely populated west. Aachen city centre. Many people here are scared of the nearby Belgian nuclear power station. They are open about their protest. Everywhere there are demands to close Tihange. The Aachen region filed a lawsuit in a Belgian court to stop Tihange from operating further. The state of North Rhine-Westphalia has since done the same.
Because of the constant problems, we've completely lost any faith that the Tihange reactor is safe. There are constant problems. If you look at the ground contamination that occurs when you have a severe problem at Tihange, you'll see that the area around Liège and Charleroi, Saint-Vit and Aachen will be uninhabitable in the long term. We can't just ignore that.
To protect the population, the city of Aachen keeps 300,000 iodine tablets in the hospital pharmacy. It's a half-hearted reassurance measure. The quantity would hardly suffice, and the distribution hasn't been sorted yet either. The German national government has now made an official request to Belgium to take all the nuclear reactors close to the border off the grid for the time being, to clear up unanswered safety questions, they say.
The crucial aspect here is that we don't have a direct influence on the decisions made by our neighbour. People don't like to hear that, but it's a fact. We can't tell the Belgian, Ukrainian and Swiss authorities how they deal with their energy needs. We can't forbid them to continue operating their nuclear power stations. We don't like this situation, and with all due respect for national sovereignty with regard to nuclear power, we are open about that.
Germany's neighbours are a long way from abandoning nuclear power. This frustrates many residents in Aachen.
If you see the people in this area, I've never seen so many young people with children who say, "You have to do something." It can't be right that we take the risk and that we have to wait for a problem to occur before we're proved right.
The operator of the Belgian power stations is called Electrabel. A former board member is now the head of the Belgian Federal Agency for Nuclear Control. He decides whether operating periods get extended or not. The decision of this allegedly independent body is that Tihange can stay connected for another 10 years, with all its risks for the population. Europe's largest nuclear power station is in eastern Ukraine, near a region where fighting is taking place. The reactor wouldn't withstand being bombarded by heavy artillery. Nuclear fission set in stone, an art installation in the town center of Zaporozhye in honor of nuclear power. Nuclear energy is considered clean and reliable here, despite Chernobyl. The nuclear power lobby has it easy, because Russia has cut its gas supplies to Ukraine, and the coal mines are in territory controlled by the separatists. More than half of the country's energy requirements are met by nuclear power. The government has become a hostage to the nuclear power industry. The 6 huge reactor blocks and turbine halls are 30 years old already. They're correspondingly in need of repair and prone to problems. Nevertheless, the operating period has been extended by another 15 years. The workers cling to the power station that gives them a good livelihood and social security in amidst the uncertainties of Ukraine. An entire town with a population of 52,000 makes its living from the power station. Rare insights into the interior of Europe's largest power station. Unlike in Switzerland and Belgium, the operators allow us to film. A senior manager takes us to the turbine hall. This turbine can generate 1,000 megawatts of power, we're told by the chief engineer, a Russian. Vladimir Levinsky has been working here for 30 years. Now he has to watch as more and more problems are reported. A smoldering fire devastated the ventilation system. There have been leaks in the cooling system. Radioactive water seeped out. Shortly after this footage was filmed, one reactor block had to be switched off. Zaporozhye is a high-risk nuclear power station. The command center is at the heart of the reactor. The technology dates back to the 80s. Only the best experts work here, says the engineer.
Something like Chernobyl or Fukushima couldn't happen here. The situations that caused the disasters there couldn't happen here. We're always well prepared, and we do everything we can to avoid problems. The people who work here know what they're doing, and they're alert.
That was said in Chernobyl and Fukushima too, before the disasters. The special risk with this nuclear reactor is that a serious problem in just one of the blocks can affect the other 5, since they are built so closely together. That could have devastating consequences. They could be far-reaching enough to affect Germany.
Here we have the pumps, the diesel generators, and an emergency cooling system that also works during a disaster. We also have mobile cooling systems in the event of a problem like Fukushima. Mobile pipes are laid down to channel the water. Cooling is guaranteed in our system. We've drawn our conclusions and implemented new safety measures.
But what good are such systems when there's war all around? There has never been live firing so close to a nuclear power station before. It's 150 kilometers to the combat zone from here. The negotiated truce has cracked. The fighting continues. The separatists want more. And they've got missiles that'll reach all the way to Zaporozhye. The town next to the power station is an important strategic target for the pro-Russian fighters. Iron, manganese and nickel are processed in large steelworks. Locomotives and machines are manufactured in these factories. Europe's largest hydropower plant is also located in Zaporozhye. It too is a strategic target. Dangerous times lie ahead.
Zaporozhye, like many nuclear power stations, isn't strong enough to withstand impact from weapons. Damage can be caused. It's not just about the reactor building. It's about other safety systems too. Nobody dares to surmise how a nuclear power station will cope in a war zone or in a region with separatist conflicts.
The power station stands on the river Dnieper, one of Ukraine's major rivers. It used to be full of fish. Today, it's a polluted wastewater channel, and one that's also overheated thanks to the nuclear power station. The anglers are well aware of this. They hardly catch anything. They come more for the social get-together. We're on a river ferry. A small group of local journalists and environmentalists are also on board. They love their river. They write about the environmental sins committed on its banks. The nuclear reactor is one of them.
Страна, которая затапливает черноземы, которая, значит,
According to the original plans of the authorities, the power station was to be closed down in 2015. But nobody's doing it. Instead, loans are taken out, but we're not told what for. Another problem is what to do with all the nuclear waste. Russia's not taking it anymore.
They try to comfort us and emphasize the allegedly high safety levels. They lull us into a sense of security and tell us it's all completely different from Chernobyl.
Nobody will talk to us. All this nuclear power is a collection of delayed decisions. They want the next generation to deal with the problem. That's their logic.
Their hometown of Nikopol is on the other side of the river to the reactor. The activists hand out their information leaflets about the dangers of the Zaporozhye power station. They aren't given much attention. The people here have enough worries in their everyday lives. The power station on the big river, a deceptive idyll. In Switzerland, the nuclear power station is situated on the River Aare, a tributary of the Rhine. Those who built the nuclear power station in Beznau clearly didn't look at any history books. The river may look tranquil, but it has turned into a raging torrent several times. The Aare did once flood over this high wall in 1881. And that's not far from where the power station now stands. The high water mark was 7.80 meters in this location, as a plaque informs us.
In Bad Schandau, on the border to the Czech Republic, the Elbe rose 12 meters in 2002 in Germany, in a valley that's 3 times wider than the Aare Valley in Beznau. The notion that in an extreme event water levels would only rise by 37 centimetres, and now they've raised that figure to a metre, is downright laughable.
If the river rose by 8 meters, the entire island on which the power station stands would be flooded. That's a real danger because there have been several such flooding events in the area. The cooling system could fail, almost like in a tsunami. But the water's not the only threat. The attack happened in the early hours of the morning. A group of Greenpeace activists entered the Beznau power station. They didn't just want to demonstrate against the continued operation of the power station, they also wanted to show how easily such a facility can be accessed, unnoticed by the security guards. Nuclear power stations as potential targets for terrorists. Terrorism in Belgium. Suicide bombers have once again killed people and destroyed infrastructure. Uncertainty, despair, and hysteria spread. It was believed there were terrorists around the Tihange power station. False messages and fear rapidly spread. An elevated terrorism alert, a further argument to immediately get out of nuclear power. These power stations increasingly resemble fortresses. They've become states within states, but even these fences can be penetrated. Zaporozhye in Ukraine, Europe's largest power station. It's not just under threat from missiles. Sabotage is another problem, despite security. The Russian nuclear power expert Vladimir Chernov explains how that works. He saw the inside of a nuclear reactor for the first time in Chernobyl.
There were around 1,000 of us. We had to clean up the rubble. Later, I was made part of a special sabotage unit. I was also trained for French power stations because I speak French. The West was our enemy. We had a test facility where we could simulate everything. That's where we learned how you could enter a power station unnoticed and attach explosive charges.
Vladimir Chernov has the exact plans of the Zaporozhye nuclear reactor on his home computer. He needed them for the job he used to do.
Our first job was here in Zaporozhye. 8 of us entered the power station and we completed our job. As a drill, of course. We were given a medal and the director was fired. Sabotage is easy. All nuclear power stations work in the same way. You don't have to blow them up, you just have to manipulate some pipes and destroy others. That creates panic. If the Russians wanted to enter this reactor, it would be easy for them.
Another worthwhile target for attackers. For 15 years now, 30,000 fuel rods have been stored out in the open, in concrete containers behind this sliding gate. They're very radioactive. New ones are added all the time. The Russians are refusing to take them. Nobody knows what to do with them. There's no final storage solution.
Wir sind so dumm, 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 dumm. Wir sind so dumm. Und es begann eine Epoche des Fortschritts.
Und dann forschte man etwas ganz, ganz Neuem.
An der Kernspaltung. Bum, 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 bum. Nagasaki. Bum, 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 bum. Hiroshima. Bum, 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 bum. Fukushima. Bum, 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 bum. Betznau. Bum, bum. Ups, das war wohl dumm, 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 dumm.
Vielleicht sollten wir einfach mal innehalten und nachdenken. Einfach mal nichts statt Dummes tun.
Heini Glauser and his friends continue their silent protest against nuclear power in the hope that all of Europe will say no to nuclear power one day.
I don't think nuclear power has a future. It's an outdated model because it doesn't make financial sense. There are very few countries in Europe that are building new ones.
The caravan of opponents will have to move on for quite some time before their warnings reach other European countries. They're not just fighting against an overly powerful lobby, they're also fighting short memories. Chernobyl and Fukushima seem far away, and yet the threat is lurking right on Germany's borders.